Salutations everybody, it is Matty here today with an old-fashioned Fallout 76 news update. It seems a lot more people are open to the Wastelanders update ever since my hands-on impressions video, so I wanted to continue the coverage of the Wastelanders update. The following information comes from Bethesda's Inside the Vault series, which they do every single Thursday, and we're going to be going over a ton of information from the Wastelanders panel at PAX East. Some of this may be familiar, but there's also a Q&A at the end that has a bunch of brand new information, but I really wanted to round up everything that we know so far about this update and get right into it, so let's dive in. Wastelanders takes place 1 year after the base game begins, and we wanted to make the world realistically feel like time has passed. Some details are small, like the fact that your Pip-Boy now reflects that the year is 2103, and some are huge like NPCs, factions, and updated locations. I really thought this was cool, and it was just a minor detail, but the date on the Pip-Boy has actually changed, and I just wanted to point that out initially. Now, I talked a bit about this in my impressions video, but what of the later game players? How does Wastelanders roll out for you if you're level 90, level 100 and something, or even higher than that? I know some people are insanely high levels in this game. There's a new intro, so you can jump right in, straight out of the gates, but high-level characters can go back to Vault 76, and the NPCs will respond to those players too. Now, this part's kind of cool. If you're a super high level, they might be a little more intimidated by you than someone fresh out of the vault. So you'll notice little hints of reaction throughout this entire write-up that I'm covering. Bethesda's seemingly going to a length to make sure that the world responds to your player, even in that initial meeting right outside of Vault 76. They may recognize how powerful you are, and I don't know what level they consider very high, because for me, super high is like the mid 100s, but for a lot of people who haven't played a lot of 76, it might be like the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. Anyway, continuing on, let's talk about instances. This is something that I covered a bit in my hands-on impressions, how there are these team-only environments. Let's get the actual explanation from the dev. Before, when you would go into these places, who knows what state it could have been left in. People could have gone in and cleared out the entire dungeon. There could have been literally nothing left for you to do, and that's kind of a hit or miss experience. Also, you will not get an empty dungeon. You'll get an experience that's full of life and is tailored to you going in there. Also, there was no way we could really react to you, your choices, your decisions. Instances make it so that we can cumulatively, step by step, keep track of what you've chosen so it can be reflected as you go along. I thought this was an interesting bit of information because while I covered it, I think it also low-key tells us why this expansion got delayed in the first place. It seems like Bethesda tried to keep the dungeon design for Wastelanders the same as it's always been in Fallout 76, which was publicly available. So sometimes you would enter a dungeon and it would be entirely cleared out or entirely looted, and that could be, as they described, a hit or miss experience. So I think the instance dungeons are actually a significant step forward, not just for Wastelanders, the choices you can make and how you can have ramifications throughout the story, but the game of 76 itself, because now maybe future dungeons can be built on this infrastructure where there isn't going to be much player involvement, or perhaps an option to load just your team into an area and create a private location, if you will. I don't know how that technology would work, but still, I think this is much grander than just the choices you can make in the story and how Bethesda's found a way to sidestep issues of players getting involved in that manner. Now, one of the biggest additions, of course, is dialogue, talking with human NPCs. While it's been core to all of the Fallout games, 76 was not one of those, so let's get a little bit into that. These are conversations. We're trying to connect you with human beings and emotions. We're trying to give you a real impetus for why you're doing the things you're doing. We're not just limiting dialogue to 4 options, says Gardner. There are a number of different ways you can interact with NPCs based on your specials, previous events you've taken part in, as well as the kind of character you want to roleplay. Yeah, so if you want to simplify in just one single sentence what Fallout 76 has done to the Fallout franchise, tell people this. Matty got excited over there being more than 4 dialogue options in a Fallout game. Fallout used to be the role-playing game, and now, look where I am. But still, as someone who played Fallout 76 Wastelanders, I do have to say I was really happy to see one conversation had 7 dialogue options, and I gladly dove into the lore. I asked questions about the character, I learned more about them. It was really nice, and if that's a representation of the full product, I think Fallout fans are going to be in for a treat. A big reason that they're allowed to do these expansive conversations is because 76 is a lot more focused. They're not fully populating the world like a traditional Fallout game. They're doing it over time. So each character can receive specific focus and in turn make their dialogue a little more expansive. And then because things are a little more limited and focused right now, I think there might be greater ramifications for the choices you can make now and in future updates. That's just a bit of speculation, but I wouldn't be too surprised if down the line when Bethesda inevitably adds more human NPCs, more quests, that we're going to see more expansive dialogue, quite like I saw. So when I put my hands on this demo, I actually saw in real time the special having an impact on the conversation. What I did not know was the events that you can take part in throughout the entire open world will actually have an impact on choices you can make in the game, which I think gives them a little more meaning, more of a reason for you to dive into them. Sometimes I pass them by because I really wasn't interested in yet another dynamic moment in the world. I just wanted to continue my questing, continue my exploration, but knowing that there may be an impact on a quest down the line, a little more incentive there. This aspect I'm a little iffy on. Let's go ahead and talk about how the factions are going to work in your interactions with them. As you dig into Wastelanders, you'll encounter two different factions you can side with, the Settlers and the Raiders. Though Gardner says you don't have to choose one or the other for most of the game, giving you the chance to experience both the Settlers story and the Raiders story. Sounds good to me. You can kind of go down both quest lines to a point, Baldwin adds. You eventually have to make a decision, but you can go far enough with both sides before that point that you get a sense of who these people are. Whoever you end up siding with, it's not like you can't be friends with the other side. We have a reputation system. It's just that the side you do choose to help, you'll get a huge bump in your relationship with them. Okay, so for me personally, when I read this, I was like, this defeats the purpose of the reputation system. The idea of a reputation system is that one faction would hate me so much they would, for example, attack me on sight. So when you're going through the quest line with the Settlers and the Raiders, and I do something that completely craps on the Raiders, they should not like me. I should not be able to do little fetch quests and make good with them. No, that's not how it should work. You know, I do something to betray them, and the world should respond to that. And it seems like that's more of a temporary decision, which I personally think is a little disappointing. We'll see how it plays out in real time. I like that they're giving us time to learn both factions first before making a decision. I think that's really important. Sometimes with these updates and these types of stories, you can commit a little too early and feel a bit regretful. So I'm glad that they're not going down that path. But I gotta say, man, when they're saying we have a reputation system as a point of defense, that's not how it's really supposed to work as far as I'm concerned. And you just have to look back in the catalog of Fallout games to really understand that. That being said, even if you side with the Raiders in the new storyline, there is one Raider faction that will remain hostile to you, the Blood Eagles. We spoke about this new enemy group while showing off Riding Shotgun, one of the new events in Wastelanders that has players working with NPCs to escort some Brahmin through a series of tunnels under Foundation, which you are watching right now in the background. So yes, there's still going to be that default hostile raider group that will likely populate a number of areas throughout the wasteland. I think this makes sense and doesn't really impact any of the arguments I was making earlier about the reputation system and choices in the story. So now we have a number on the allies or companions you're going to get in Wastelanders. In Wastelanders, there are even NPCs you can recruit and get to know better outside of the main story quests. These allies will come back to camp with you and give you quests, and of course they are romanceable. There are 2 major allies and 3 lighter allies. The lighter allies will protect your camp and give you daily quests, but they aren't necessarily main characters and you'll have to track them down in the world rather than finding them in hub locations. So it sounds like to me, 1 major ally for the Settlers, 1 major ally for the Raiders, and then the lighter allies will be spread out throughout the open world, which I think is kind of cool. It sounds a little more focused, and while it may be more limited than what I think people have wanted with this update, we have to remember it is a live service game, and I think we're going to see a lot more of everything we're talking about throughout this entire update. Now, I did mention this in my preview, but I really want to say it again because it is an important change coming to Fallout 76. At the end of the panel, we shared a little bit about what's coming post Wastelanders, including completely reworking how regions of Appalachia and the leveling system function together in order to make the whole world viable for you at any level. Say goodbye to high level and low level zones. Enemies you encounter will be at your level and at your friends' levels so you can play together. Once again, there was an update called One Tamriel for Elder Scrolls Online many years ago, and that update did exactly this. It stripped out the zones and made it so that you were fighting enemies of your level and you could party up with anyone. So you could party up with someone who's end game, high ass level. You could party up with someone who just picked up the game. It did not matter. It just enabled you to play together easier, which I like and is good news for anyone hopping in down the line. All right, so there was a couple of highlights from the Q&A that I wanted to point out. One of them is a little strange, and I wanted to get into that first. Can we still launch nukes in Wastelanders? If so, what happens to settlements like Crater and Foundation? You can still definitely launch nukes in Wastelanders. This isn't the Raiders or Settlers' first rodeo either. They will jump into their own hazmat suits to protect themselves from radiation. So I didn't think this directly answered their own question that they're posing for themselves. I think the real question here is, can you drop a nuke on Crater or Foundation, or those locations that you can actually select? My guess is no, but it'll be interesting to see if a nuke drops nearby that they're going to go ahead and change how exactly they look. And oh, God forbid there's an exploit or a glitch that allows you to nuke Crater or Foundation, the game's gonna fall apart. Is Wastelanders going to be strictly solo play, or will team play be an option? I thought this was important to cover. You can play through the new story content solo or as part of a team. If you're the team leader, your teammates can also choose to, quote, listen in, end quote, as you have conversations with different NPCs during your quest. So friends can easily tag along and then tag in on your conversations and at least listen. I don't know if they can participate and do something similar to how Divinity Original Sin 1 worked, where you sort of dice roll for a conversation choice. Same thing happened in Star Wars The Old Republic. I think it's just a listening option, but we'll see in due time. Anyway, that does round up all of the information I wanted to highlight from Bethesda's Inside the Vault for March 5th, 2020. Wastelanders is just about a month and a couple of days away as we record this video, and I'm sure we'll have a lot more to cover as we get closer to that. But as I mentioned in my impressions video, it's looking good, man. I'm really happy with what I played, and it's definitely on my radar now. So what do you guys think of all the information I presented today for Fallout 76 Wastelanders? Let me know in the comments down below. Other than that, follow me on Twitter, follow me on Instagram. Big thank you to all of the patrons who continue to support my content here. Big love to all of you, and I'll talk with all of you soon. Stay sexy, stay active. I love you all. Peace.